Welcome this morning to our class, The 10 Commandments of Truck Company Operations. And I want to welcome all of you that are watching this on not only on DVD, but my live audience here this morning. We've got several different fire departments that are representing for this class. And as I was just talking to the audience before we started filming this, that this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about, because basically fireground operations today, I think, have dramatically changed from a couple of different viewpoints. Number one, the fires that we go to are significantly different than the fires we went to yesterday. We'll talk about that throughout the class. Secondly, the apparatus, the tools and equipment that we have available to us today are totally different than we had yesterday. You know, as an example, you can walk up to a building, and I'm simplifying, of course, with your thermal imaging camera, and you can scan the, oh yeah, there's the fire right there. And that's significantly different than the firefighters back in the 50s and the 60s. I came in the fire service in 1963. When SCBA was just starting to come into the fire service. And so we've gone a long ways in the fire service, what we have available to us, and the people that we have available to us. But basically, we still go to structure fires. In fact, if I was to ask the audience that is here this morning, why did you primarily join the fire service, what would you say? To fight fire, exactly right. And would you agree with me that the best fire you will ever go to is the fire you can go to in somebody else's district and beat them in?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely right, right?
Yes.
And take the fire away from them. We didn't join the fire service to do ladders, salvage, overhaul, all those little goodies. We did it really to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. But what fascinates me about this class we're going to talk about this morning is truck company operations. Truck companies don't put out fires. What do truck companies do, basically? Determine how you put a fire out. And so if I was to start off this morning and ask you, what is a truck company, what would you say? Now, if you look at the pictures that you have on the screen, you'll notice that I have 4 different types of apparatus. Yeah, there's a mid-mount, there's a platform on there, there's an aerial ladder on there, but if you look at the 2 bottom pictures, there's 2 very interesting pieces of apparatus. The one on the right side is what's called a ladder tender, which is becoming more popular in the country. It's basically a rig that carries all of the truck equipment, except it doesn't have an aerial ladder. Why is that becoming more popular? Because how often do you use an aerial ladder? Not that often. And that apparatus, although it's not perfect, is a lot cheaper and has a lot lower operating expense than a typical truck company, which is, I think, illustrated by the 2 pictures that are on the top. And then you notice on the lower left-hand picture, there's an engine company. Can an engine company be a truck company? How so? If a department, and there's departments that are watching this program, do not have a truck company, then who is responsible for truck company operations, which we'll get into in just a minute. Then who is responsible for truck company operations? An engine company is. So you don't necessarily have to have, quote, a truck that has an aerial device on it. If you don't, then an engine company is responsible for those operations. And you say, what are those operations? And those are operations, as I just mentioned, that determine how a fire is put out. Classic example. If you look at fireground operations, you can divide them into 2 different categories. Putting the fire out, the wet stuff on the red stuff, and then everything else, which you can also call logistics. The focus is not on fire tech. You say, what's logistics? Can be search and rescue, can be utilities, can be inside operations, in other words, lights, taking maybe a hook or a pike pole in, checking for extension of fire, forcible entry, overhaul, salvage, and so on. All those can be classified as logistical operations. So basically what we're looking for when we go to a fire is a coordinated attack between fire attack and logistical operations. And here's a classic example. You will notice this is a fire. It was on the 5th floor of an abandoned warehouse. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. When you look at that picture, when that picture was taken, right before the area went up, if you were the IC, what would be your number 1 or your first priority?
Access.
Right, access to the fire. Single-family dwelling. When you pull up in front of a single-family dwelling, and let's say it's 40 feet back from the street, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, the windows and the doors are closed. You're notified that somebody is still trapped inside. what is your first priority? And it's not search. It's going to be forcible entry. You have to get inside of the structure. And I think today, if you've had the opportunity to see one of Dave Dodson's programs on the art of reading smoke, great program, that when you pull up in front of a building, let's say you have heavy, dark, black, pressurized smoke from every door and window, Dave will tell you it's probably not long until what's going to happen? Flashover. Flashover. So in that case, maybe ventilation is going to be a top priority. Back to this picture right here, I think you can see that their top priority was getting the firefighters to the fire, which was approximately 50 feet above the ground. So on this one, it was access. It was access, which is the first priority. And so therefore, let me summarize all of that and say, today, are truck company operations or logistics more important than yesterday? What would you say?
Absolutely.
I would say absolutely. Why?
Fire ground's more complicated.
The fire ground is more hostile, but I can think of a couple of good reasons. NFPA tells us our three major problems on a fire ground, which are all directly related to building construction, by the way, are you fall into it falls on you, and what's number three? Flashover. When I came into the fire service in 1963, I could have told you what a backdraft was. I had never heard of a flashover. Today, now, flashover has replaced backdraft. Why? In fact, if you're familiar with Billy Goldfelder's programs and his website, Close Calls, excellent, excellent. You will notice if you look at those, you're starting to see an increasing frequency. We pulled up in front of the structure. It didn't appear to be that bad. I went into the structure, and suddenly, what happens? It flashes over. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, San Francisco lost 2 firefighters from a flashover. Single-family dwelling. And I think the reason for that is fairly simple. If you look at what we're burning today, you will notice that we used to have basically conventional materials, wood, wool, paper, cotton.